Oh, look at the people standing there.
Look at the people at the parade.
Look at the people.
Look at the people at the bill signing, at the picnic at the White House. Look at them. Watching you make a fool of me. Pity the fool.
Good everything, everybody.
Everything. Independence Day. That was yesterday, right? Off Twitter.
I was at the job.
That's what I'm saying. Independence.
Yes. Correct.
Thank you.
Why'd you want to start here, sir? America on the road. This is one of your favorite songs.
My favorite. That's the national anthem right there. If you're gonna be an American, Robert Calvin Bland, the pride of Memphis. After he was born in Rosemary, Tennessee, Barrettsville, Tennessee, then moved to Memphis with his mama and his stepdaddy, Bobby Blue Bland. Didn't play an instrument. That wasn't him on the.
He did play an instrument. His voice.
His voice, like Sarah Vaughan, no question. But that was Wayne Bennett on them licks right there with 2 trumpets and a 6-piece band, recorded in Chicago, 1960. Released on that was his second #1. Farther Up the Road was the first, but Pity the Fool from an album called 2 Steps from the Blues. So here's the thing about African people, Professor Hunter. We're the best. I mean, let's just, we ain't got to argue with nobody. You play your song, we'll play our song, and let's see which song ends up being played after we both play our songs. Your song is never played after we play. David Bowie, everybody's recorded that. Bowie, I got respect for Bowie. He's a great, he's had his creative talent bent to the will of African people like everybody else, Rolling Stones. But Bobby Blue Bland right there, I mean, I was rereading his biography. And Charles Farley wrote a book called Soul of the Man, Bobby Blue Bland. And he interviews one of these blues critics who says that song right there, he began singing kind of calmly, basically saying that he pities the fool that fall in love with this certain woman. Now, there are generations, we talk about moving in memory in our African States framework, from generation to generation to generation. How do we remember certain moments, texts, icons, however we go across time and space? Unless you have a certain grounding in meaning making and a certain relationship in governance formations, you don't remember I Pity the Fool from Bobby Blue Bland. Who do we remember it from? I Pity the Fool.
Oh,
Mr. T.
Mr. T.
But see, and Mr. T said, it's not an expression of anger at another person. It's an expression of, I feel sorry for what's about to happen to you. I pity the fool that would come. So I guess what I'm saying, we don't remember Bland, but the meme comes through. See, they would call it meme, but we would call it as movement in memory. How does it move from generation to generation to generation? Well, David Evans, one of these blues critics writing in Charles Farley's book on Bobby Blue Bland, says that he starts that song singing calmly. I feel sorry for you, man. But then you realize the deeper you get into it, he's singing about himself. And then he starts screaming about the people standing there watching him make a fool of himself. And so, whereas David Evans in the book says, Bland is the picture of utter humiliation in this frightening outburst, sounding like he's going to do harm to himself or somebody else. This is powerful soul blues at its emotional best. I respect that perspective, and I understand it as a social structures perspective. You're a white man. You don't understand that the heart of the blues is optimism. He's singing that like, I pity the fool, and you can do something about it. We can do something about this criminal enterprise we're in. They are terrified. Them little people crowded around that little ass table at the White House yesterday, and I was half a mile from there. Steve Scalise, a black woman saved your life, you funky Louisiana racist. And you out there clapping the hatred, puffing you out. Trump standing there saying, I'm happy. This is a blues moment. I pity the fool that fall in love with these people. And guess what? We never loved you. Have some self-respect. I love Bobby Blue Bland because he's calling us to be better. And he's reminding us that we can be. It's the same motif. It's the same feeling that's at the heart of the music and sinners. We undefeated. We can be. You just got to remember. That's all. I pity the fool. That's the national anthem. Y'all play that Star Spangled Banner some other time.
I couldn't watch all of the celebrations and the signings, and and I've spent very little time talking about things that are done So,
No, I mean, but you did go to work yesterday. What was
well,
that about?
well, I don't consider the echo.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute here.
Okay. I don't consider Sirius XM work for me. Its mission, its purpose, and so we share what we cooking out, what we changed up in the cookout since we are being more health conscious. A lot of people like, what are you doing? We had a lot of fun because it was Foolishness Friday as well. So, for me, it's community, it's plug in, it's reminder. We had one new caller who was, lamenting about feeling lonely and alone and finding this space, one day with a new car and immediately feeling, wow, okay, what is this? And so, I was driving around yesterday morning listening to you and Lamont, on the radio. It's beautiful. I even played a clip from this day before show with the caller Mo, who y'all talked about again. And Roderick Morrow was like, people like, how didn't he know he was being set up? As you were laying the trap for him, he said, how didn't he, like, when that next question comes, you don't have an answer, that you should probably not open your mouth. But he walked right into it. And Roderick was cracking up how you set that man up to come to the conclusion that government is not a business. These people are not your little friends. They're there to make sure that we can eat and breathe and have clean water and all of the things. They are there. This is not a business. And to elect someone thinking that this country or any state house or city is a business is a dumb thing. And we should pity the fool, but then we have to suffer. And then double down on that, you elect somebody who's been bankrupt 6 times. So even if you thought it was a business, you didn't even elect a good business person. So what are we doing here exactly until we land on the reason why they actually elected him is because they feel so tiny and small and insignificant that the only thing that they have to hold on to is this made up construct of whiteness that will give them some dominion over other people. At what cost? Your health, your teeth, your very brain cells. Like, yes, they're willing to give it all up for this fictional, mythical superpower that somehow this man promised him that he himself doesn't possess. Make it make sense, Dr. Carr.
You just made it make sense. That's our theme. That's our theme for this week. This is I think when we look back, and there won't be a United States in the current formation. I don't know how much longer it's going to be, maybe 100 years, maybe 50 years, maybe 2 years, who knows, but who cares really? But you just named it. You just laid it out. Government's job is not business. Government's job is how do you facilitate power? How do you distribute resources? The United States prints money. It is the reserve currency in the world, at least for the foreseeable future. So the idea of a deficit is a political formation. It's a political concept, as much as it is, maybe even more than an economic concept. If we understand that, then we understand that when the white nationalists return to the minority in the two-party system that the United States currently has and begin to campaign on reducing the deficit, those who watch them increase a deficit by potentially $5 trillion over the next decade will return to saying we need to do something about the deficit. And those who think that we're operating in a world of logic will tear what's left of their hair out. I won't be doing that, of course, because I understand it has nothing to do with logic. The deficit is only a problem when the politics don't match the agenda as it relates to the deficit. When the white nationalists are in power, the deficit doesn't exist. We only have to remember something said by a hardcore white internationalist, Dick Cheney, when he was the power of the George W. Bush administration. It was Dick Cheney referring to another thoroughly incompetent governor of California, ex-governor of California, and former president of the United States, Ronald Wilson Reagan. It was Dick Cheney that said deficits don't matter. He said, as Reagan showed us, deficits don't matter. They don't matter. You take power and you do what you want. Unless you understand white supremacy, again, as the late Neely Fuller, the ancestor Neely Fuller would say, you understand white supremacy, how it works, what it does, everything else you think you understand will only confuse you. So what you laid out to us, in fact, is the crisis, the tragedy, and the opportunity. That's how it makes sense. This week, thought that we would take as our theme America on the ropes for a very specific reason I'll get into in a minute. And we'll spend most of our hour revisiting something that we evoked in session 154 of In Class, and then again in session 190 in class. Session 154 was entitled, How Do We Educate? It was when we were talking about the advanced placement course that had just debuted and a couple of summers ago. And then not quite a year later, at 190, we asked the question, at our limit, what will we risk? So go back into the archive, everyone. You can revisit sessions 154 and sessions 190 to get deeper into the subject that we'll spend most of the hour on, which is Jack Johnson. We talked about Jack Johnson in both those, but I want to emphasize what you've raised, Prof, as you kind of open the way and set the tone and frame for what we'll discuss today. It's not about deficits. It's not about money in terms of owing money. The United States, Tom Friedman, no friend of broad progressive agendas, and some people call him, in fact, I remember one of the biographies of Friedman called him basically the journalist, the diarist of empire, of U.S. empire. Thomas Friedman, probably, if you know that name at all, columnist for the New York Times, you know him for his book, The World is Flat, where he's talking about, the shrinking of the world, supply chains, the whole question of globalization. Very informative. And he's, like any other good U.S. white nationalist journalist, he wants to hold on to American power as long as he can, even when he's being critical of it. It's with the purpose of holding on to it and extending it. And Tom Friedman, the other day, actually yesterday, in the New York Times, wrote his op-ed, and he said, he opens it with, if you get quiet, you can hear this noise coming from the east. What is that? That's the sound of 1.4 billion Chinese laughing after you pass this bill, and went so much deeper in debt and are shrinking that much further within this kind of question of American nativism. The Chinese are filling gaps everywhere. Supply chains. There are zero tariffs for trade and export between African countries and China. I was talking with a good brother from Cameroon on Wednesday, and he had an electric vehicle, a Kia, a great American brand. And and I was like, how do you like it? He says, it's cool, I've been thinking about electric vehicles, man, hybrids, electric vehicles. He said, let me tell you something. And he started naming the different countries he's been to in the last year or so, including Dubai, including he's been in Malaysia, several countries in Africa. He's developing some business opportunities. And I'll come back to that in a minute, tie that together. It's something I just read in the brand new edition of New York Magazine. It just came out. And he said, everywhere I went, the car I saw the most was BYD. I said, yeah, man, these BYD cars, man, these Chinese cars have got they were getting rave reviews. He said, yeah, and the cars are cheaper than the cars here, and they're better than the electric vehicles here, including the one I'm driving. I said, really, man, that car right here, we stand in front of that. He said, yeah, man. And I just thought about it because, again, Tom Friedman, you're hearing the world laughing at the United States as it craters itself and as they strip out in this legislation that has been signed into law subsidies for green energy, solar, wind. And as Bozo, as his mind melts and what's left of it, I don't know if he has any much of the mind left. He can say anything, racial slurs, ethnic slurs, this kind of thing, talking about the wind, whales washing up on the beaches. I mean, and of course they don't care because he's a delivery system for something else. But at a moment when the world is surging toward green energy and the Chinese have invested decades of resources into developing the technology that would allow them to lead the world, now the Chinese will lead humanity for not only the foreseeable future, but for a very long time, maybe permanently. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. The United States will not lead, because at the moment when quantum leaps are being taken in terms of not just energy, but the uses of energy, for example, artificial intelligence and data centers, the United States in their legislation says, F the clean energy, we're going to coal and oil and natural gas. So the self-harm, the self-own can't be overstated. America on the ropes. Except I don't know that the United States of America has the muscle, the skill, or the will to endure Muhammad Ali's technique of rope-a-dope, because in this case, they're not fighting just George Foreman. They're fighting every fighter in the world, and the United States will lose. But that doesn't matter to Bozo because he's making money. Remember that in order to generate the kind of energy you need to run these massive data centers that are operating all this technology we're using, you need electricity, you need energy. And what you see is some of the biggest players now in the international clean energy solar game, wind game, are those very places that Bozo and his white nationalist crew are conceding to. But it doesn't matter to Bozo because Bo was getting ready to make some money off it. Remember, his first trip overseas since he came back into that office was into the so-called Middle East and the Saudis. And they have one of the largest initiatives and agendas to diversify and to go in the green economy. And remember, Bozo signed, and his business friends who were on the plane with him signed an agreement for 2 huge data centers there. And guess what? Oil and gas, even though they're sitting on so much of it, they're moving to solar. And they got some of the biggest solar farms in the world in that region. It's not about budgets, as Mo told us, against, I think, what was probably his instinct. But at that point, he had owned himself, and it's not embarrassed. I pity the fool. Don't call up here, man. I literally feel sorry for you. I ain't mad at you. We're gonna use you as a teachable moment. But as Mo reminded us, government's not business. And as the front page of New York Times reminds us, as I move through this quickly, reminds us this morning. This is Saturday, July 5th. Shout out, by the way, to July the 5th. 1852, great Frederick Augustus Bailey Douglas, who gave the speech on July 5th. What to the slave is the 4th of July, because up to and through, as we talked about in class, you can go back into our bibliography, and thank you again, Brother Ken Richards and all the crew that worked on the bibliography and continues to work on that living document. You can search it for the extensive conversation we had about Fred Douglass, and then moving up to and through the Centennial Exposition in 1876 for the United States of America, the Centennial of the United States of America. By the way, fast forward to next year, 2026, the 250th birthday of the United States of America. Bozo has announced with Dana White that there will be an ultimate fighters competition at the White House. Well, I love it. I love it. I pity the fool. You fall in love with these people. I love it. The whole country been WrestleMania since the first white toe hit the shore. So why not bring it to the heart of the criminal enterprise? I can't tell you. It's difficult sometimes for me to contain my enthusiasm. But in that conversation, if you search the compendium, we talk about that 1876 centennial celebration of the United States birthday and Fred Douglass's involvement and others coming through. And then you map that a generation to the 1850s. And July 5th is when Black folk, including Fred Douglass, who gave that famous speech in 1852. July 5th is the date that African people would mark. This precedes Juneteenth. July the 5th is the date African people would mark, not to celebrate independence because we were not free, but to in fact emphasize the fact that we had been and were in continuing captivity. We had been kidnapped and we're in captivity, continuing captivity. So on July 5th, 1852, Frederick Augustus Bailey Douglas asks the question, what to the captive, to the person you got in chains, is a day of independence? I ask that question today, 249 years since the official, no, can it be the official founding of the criminal enterprise? Since the official declaration of irreparable harm between the parent and the child, parent being England, the child being United States. Because remember, that's 1776. 1787 is when the federal constitution is finally approved. Between 1776 and 1787, they're working it out. What you have, and it's very interesting, is a brand new book. I don't think I had, no, it's not here. It's in my bag. It's in the other room. That's my traveling bag. When we get off here, I'm gonna go somewhere and finish reading this book. But they're talking about the fact that in 1776, there is something that unites those 13 British colonies, and that is a desire to move from Britain in what, as we always remind ourselves during this season, in what our good brother Gerald Horne calls not the American Revolution, but the counter-revolution of 1776. And you don't have to worry about the camera moving because I figured out how to keep it stationary. But as Gerald notes, it's a counter-revolution. But between 1776 and 1787, they've got to work out how they're going to stay together, because now they don't have the unifying factor of England. They do in terms of foreign policy. They don't want the English coming back, which they do from 1812 and 1812. But the challenge, as I was about to refer to this book, is that these are 13 colonies connected to Britain, but to each other, much less so. It's like 13 different countries trying to come together to form one country. So they're engaged in some ways a gesture toward foreign policy between Pennsylvania and Maryland and New York and New Jersey and South Carolina, Georgia. It's like foreign policy. They're negotiating. The compromise largely consisted over how to continue to expand the criminal enterprise with us, meaning African people, as the dimension of labor that fueled the whole thing. In fact, I was just, let me see, I thought I saw it over here. I did. Seth Rockman's book, Plantation Goods. You can check that out. Talking about how the supply chains between the North and the South is what kept the whole thing going, and captivity was at the heart of that. I've talked about that before. I won't belabor it today. But today's New York Times front page reminds us that from the beginning, well, it doesn't say from the beginning to now. I'm saying from the beginning to now, the criminal enterprise and the social structure we call the United States of America, but reminds us that the legislation we just saw signed into law was about tax cuts for billionaires, for sure. It was about radical inequality, for sure. But it was also about the ideology that lies underneath all of that quote unquote economics. So while people are arguing about the deficit, pay attention to the real thing in terms of the delivery system that will cause this country ultimately to fracture beyond reconstitution. Something that I can't say I am angry about, because my first commitment is to humanity. Sarah Mervash and Dana Goldstein writing today on the front page of the New York Times, Saturday, July 5th, under the headline, "Voucher Effort Widens Reach in Trump's Plan. States Must Opt In for Private School Funds." Here's the first two paragraphs. Congress has approved the first national school voucher plan, which will help all but the wealthiest families pay for private school and other educational expenses. The plan, passed on Thursday as part of the domestic policy bill and signed into law by President Trump on Friday, is the culmination of a long campaign by private education advocates, religious conservatives, and some parents who argued that families should have the freedom to choose the best K-12 school option for their children and get help paying for it. I am so excited. Leader Hakeem Jeffries stood for almost 9 hours and waxed eloquent about any number of things. He may have talked about this. I ain't seen all 9 hours. I looked at composite, probably a little over an hour different here, checking in, then seeing the kind of grand finale. And maybe he talked about this, but let's be very clear about it. While we talking about money and talking about all the devastating effects of the big BS bill, that's what they was after. We want your tax dollars to pay for our Christo-fascist religious schools. And guess what? We want our tax dollars to pay for our freedom schools. Let's get our money now. Now, when you understand that you're shot at building a sense of a general concept of what the country was and is and can be, your best delivery system to do that across the entire polity would be public education. But since you want to take my money and give it to your fascist school, I'm going to take my money and give it to my school. And guess what? Ain't going to be the same story, my friend. I pity the fool that falls in love with you. America's on the ropes, and they are determined to finish the job, but they've overplayed their hand. I got my Freedom School shirt on this morning. My Freedom School shirt is something one of them. I got a lot of them over the years. It's our 26th years of Freedom Schools. This is a remix of our Freedom School shirt. I show you. This is from 2021. We were deep in COVID. Y'all seen this shirt before. Shout out to Philadelphia Freedom Schools. I was there Tuesday. I'm there every Tuesday this month in Philly in person.
Yeah, I just want to. Sharif Al-Mekki was on the show this week.
Yes.
And his organization is urbanviewgives.com's this month's recipient. So those of you who, it's just a way, pass through urbanviewgives.com. You want to support people who are out there supporting us in education this month. Sharif Al-Mekki, Dr. Sharif Al-Mekki's organization, urbanviewgives.com. Send you right to him. Donate. Thank you.
No, thank you. This is how we win. Thank you, Prof. This is how we win. the Center for Black Educator Development took the baton from the School District of Philadelphia when the public funds dried up. Sharif travels this country from corner to corner and raises money. He tells the story. He is rebuilding the Black teacher pipeline. So all the young people, my girl, Sheree Hines, my daughter, really, in many ways, who has been with Freedom School since she was a scholar herself, middle school student in the Freedom Schools. Her mama and Jamila Anderson, who just won Educator of the Year in Philadelphia, works with Sharif Mekki, all of them. In fact, and Jamila was with Sharif when he was the principal at Mastery Charter School in West Philly. And then he started the Center for Black Educator Development. So her daughter is now in charge of setting that frame. And she herself came up through Freedom Schools and then was a high school student and a college student, Clark Atlanta, then Howard, and then came back home, got a master's at the University of Pennsylvania in education, and now is continuing that work. And so thank you, Prof, because what that does is showcase that we must help ourselves. At the end of the day, we can wake ourselves out of this. And thanks to these white nationalists, we get some of our public money, some of our tax money, and since y'all done signed this into law, we gonna find out. I know you don't want us to have any of that money. Maybe we can get Sharif and them some of that public money since y'all done put into the damn thing. Certainly, my sister, Dr. Aisha Imani, who is the principal and CEO of Sankofa Freedom Academy, the first in the country K-12 Freedom School, which came out of Philadelphia Freedom Schools, which is in Northeast in the Frankfurt neighborhood in Philadelphia, that is running 2 sites of Freedom Schools in addition to the other 5 that we have around the city. So at our peak, we had 21 Freedom Schools, and then the public dollars dried up. And now we continue, and now it's bigger than ever because that message now is spread everywhere globally. It is at the center of the work we do here. And so, yeah, you see the red, black, and green, of course, which is a remix of the original design. But you see the Jehudi representing reading and writing. You see the sister and the brother. She's reading, he's writing. No face in there because you put your own face in there. She's writing with the pen of Ma'at, which balances the female and male energy. Ma'at and Jehudi, who is representing a male energy, are sisters and brothers, our husband and wife, our companions. They move together. And so we do that. That red, black, and green, of course, red for the blood, green for the prosperity, and black for the people. The flag, the Pan-African flag, Marcus and Amy Garvey, Universal Negro Improvement Association. That red, black, and green isn't just there. Y'all saw, those of you watching yesterday, that I had this on. I'll never wear the American flag and go to hell. But I did put this one on yesterday because the good brother Lonnie Smith and the crew out of Texas, Actively Black, out of Houston, this is their design. I rep them. And plus, it was cool because on the sleeve of this, they have the Juneteenth flag. So, it's driving people crazy. So you can imagine I was down there yesterday on Constitution Avenue, half a mile from the White House, watching the parade with that shirt on. And I'm sure, people, so you want to say something? Would you like to say something? You see all them police in the street? I even took a picture with a handful of them. I could count the white police out here from DC police. So if you come over here and want to dance, it's a lot of black police women and men out here in the street. I doubt very seriously that they're going to come to your defense too quickly. Plus the crowd was kind of thin anyway, but I wear this because it's interesting. Brother Smith and the crew at Actively Black. This, of course, is a riff on David Hammons, the artist. David Hammons' 1990 piece of art called American Flag, where he replaces the red, white, and blue with the red, black, and green. It creates cognitive dissonance because them stars and stripes can't be redeemed. This is the cognitive dissonance that would break my heart with my homie, Mary Frances Berry, and anyone else who I understand is not naive, not historically naive, who knows the history as well or better than anybody in terms of what this country has been, what white supremacy has been, and at the same time maintains a sense of optimism. But the sense of optimism is never fully articulated because we continue to whistle past the graveyard of the United States of America. What do I mean? The optimism African people have, I think, is often grounded in the idea that this place or any place can be very different than what it is today. That's a different optimism than the white nationalists like Steve Scalise or the MAGA Muppet Mike Johnson, grinning broadly like Ernie from Bert and Ernie off Sesame Street, standing next to his Lord and Master Donald Trump as they sign that bill into law. Their optimism is on a return to the 19th century, 18th if they could get it. But then again, Scalise, Trump, or Johnson would not be in the United States in the 18th or even 19th century because their people came here very recently. But that having been said, their imaginary is the day when they could just make us do whatever the hell they want. Those days never were, in fact, but in fact, they are never coming back to even what they were then. But their optimism is based on a return to straight white domination. Mary Frances Berry and John Hope Franklin and their optimism is based on building something different. The key to that for the U.S. social structure, of course, is the Reconstruction Amendments in many ways, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. But these people want to roll back not just the 20th century, but the 19th to before that. That's why their attack has been laser focused on the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. You don't have to go to law school. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a legal scholar to enjoy the words being written right now by Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson in their dissents, because they are zeroing in on the fact that these white supremacists want to roll back the 19th century. They want to go back to what they call the antebellum era, the before antebellum war era, before the Civil War, the antebellum. They want to go back before that. If they say they don't, it's a bold-faced lie. Anybody come to me and say, that's not true, I'm going to walk you like a dog straight through the language of the Scalises and the Johnsons. Pity the fool. So yeah, I had this on yesterday because Lonnie Smith and his crew at Actively Black, riffing on David Hammond's 1990 American flag, Black American flag, put this up to give us a sense of dissonance. But that's not where it stops. David Hammond's produced another piece of art called Oh Say, Can You See? In 2017, y'all look it up. It's the same flag, except now the flag is raggedy. The edges is gone, it's flapping in the wind, it's faded. And it's the same red, black, and green flag, American flag, but it's now raggedy. It's called Oh Say, Can You See? You see the battering. But the real payoff is 20 years before 1990's African-American flag by David Hammond. The real payoff is nearly 40 years before his 2017 Oh Say Can You See, when that flag gets ripped apart and turned into shreds. The real payoff is in 1970. David Hammond did a piece, and I have it here in the British edition of the book Soul of a Nation, Art in the Age of Black Power. Y'all can get this. It was an exhibit at the Tate, London Studio Museum in New York, some other places. And you see the uses of red, black, and green. Here's the good sister Faith Ringgold with her depiction, which should trigger memories of Misha Green's Lovecraft Country. The whole idea, she calls this United States of Attica. You can imagine, even as we see the alligator Alcatraz flooding, which was the point. I don't know why anybody thought that that wasn't the point. But David Hammond has a piece in here. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Yeah, David Hammond has a piece in this exhibition catalog where he did a piece, and it's called, hold on, let me see here. Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. I should have marked it. And I thought I put a finger. Oh, it's at the beginning. Of course it is. It opens the soul of a nation, because then you talking about the United States, talking about black people in the United States. Here's the introduction. Y'all see that piece right there? That's David Hammond from 1970. It's called Black First, America Second. You see one African person grabbing the flag like Donald Trump was kissing the flag. And then you see this other cat with the head turned the other way. This is what Mark Godfrey and Zoe Whitley write to accompany the photograph of the piece of art, Black First, America Second. They write, David Hammond's, Hammons. David Hammond's Black First, America Second, 1970 is a double self-portrait where one version of self clings to the stars of the national flag, while the other self appears almost painfully cleaved by its stripes. Hammond asks not what his country can do for him. He pledges allegiance to his own community through the unambiguous ranking. Quote, I feel it is my moral obligation as a Black artist to try to graphically document what I feel socially, end quote, he said the year before it was made. People say, well, that means you're a traitor to the United States. That means I'm an absolute an eternal enemy to white supremacy, my friend. So if white supremacy means United States, you do the math, but you swear it doesn't. So what y'all gonna do? Just like Aikwe Armah, we were in the freedom schools, they're reading this. They read last week, they read from the Eloquence of the Scribes from Aikwe Armah. This coming week, we're going to do Galileo Galilei, one of the chapters, the speeches that Dr. Du Bois gave at Fisk University in his book, The Education of Black People, as we read in Nubia. Y'all remember we read that whole book. And Armah last week was talking about his mama taking him and his siblings to see the elders before they went off to school. And the elder looked at him and said, nah. Come here, get that water. Y'all need to get these worms out of your body. And Armah said, I was a little boy, I don't know what he was talking about. He said, we all drank the water and so many worms came out of us that I would have been shocked and almost paralyzed had it not been the fact that I respected and trusted these elders so much that I knew that I was going to be okay. We're going to get them worms out y'all body. David Hammond's trying to get them worms out y'all body by shocking your consciousness, because this is where we headed. But we're going to use that color to create cognitive dissonance. I watched yesterday a marching band from Savannah, Georgia. I went down to the parade. Y'all know I go to the Independence Day parade so I can get, it's a crime scene. I do crime scene investigations. This is the fans they were handing out July 4th, National Archive. And, here's the what the National Archives does. And I keep this kind of stuff. It goes in the archive. But they have a review stand usually set up at the National Archives. So whoever's in the band, if they got a thing they came to DC to do in the parade, they do it there at the review stand, usually where the review stand is. Well, the last band in the parade yesterday, after we left Sirius, I went down to the parade. The last band was for Savannah High School, Savannah, Georgia. Shout out to Savannah High School and Savannah, Georgia. It was a beautiful thing. Reginald Mitchell, who is the band director, himself a Savannah State grad, worked at Edwin Waters as assistant band director, some other places, and then came back on home to Savannah. A lot of times you see these HBHSs, these historically black high schools. Shout out to Maggie Lena Walker, who I understand they left something for me at Sankofa. I'm gonna go get it today. I got me a Maggie Lena Walker out of Virginia hoodie. Thank you. And apparently they remixed it so it says HBHS. Yes, indeed. Historically black high schools. That's a thing. We're getting that going. But a lot of times you see these historically black high schools and their band directors, their marching band directors were trained at HBCUs. And so I could see the fingerprints of the HBCUs all over Savannah High School yesterday. The last band, in fact, the last act, the last formation in the parade. This was at the very end of the parade. And then I looked them up and saw that they had stopped a couple of days before. My man, Makola Abdullah, the president of Virginia State University, the good brother, and Dr. Taylor Whitehead, who's the director of bands there at Virginia State, invited the high school students, and I guess his friend, Brother Mitchell, Reginald Mitchell, to practice at Virginia State with their band folks, Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma, the band formations, before they came to DC. But the song these young women and men played as they were coming past the National Archives, talking out the side of your neck, I started laughing. You Negroes, on a day, they down there, these white nasties down the street, you can spit and hit them, signing that big BS bill. Y'all worried about the money. I'm worried about the money too, but their ideology is tucked all through the bill in violation of their own rules on the Senate side. We say you can't put none of that. And no, we're going to do what the hell we want. There's no law. Tear it up. The black band, the HBHS band, the last one in the parade, anchoring the end of the parade, comes through playing Talking Out the Side of Your Neck. Chef's kiss. This is a chef's kiss. So America on the ropes is not a bad thing. Because when you're on the ropes, as Muhammad Ali showed us when he invented the so-called rope-a-dope, if you got the skill, the size, the talent, the ability, and the will, then you can absorb the punishment from an opponent who everybody thinks is better than you until they punch themselves out. You avoid the punches, and then you come out and knock him out like he did Big George Foreman, another recent, of course, ancestor. But that full 2-week ritual that I am determined that we will use between Juneteenth, the 19th of June, and July 4th. So from Juneteenth, there it is, this the flag, and of course, Boston Ben Haith, actively black, partnering with them for the Juneteenth year. And July 4th, If I'm gonna put a flag on, and I won't, maybe once a year I'll wear this. Maybe, I don't know, I might not wear it again, but I got it. That 2-week ritual corridor from Juneteenth to so-called Independence Day, especially next year when we go into the Ultimate Fighter competition at the White House, then paved over the Rose Garden, y'all. So you got Mar-a-Lago up there. Look at y'all, boy, y'all let this guy get back in. He's doing exactly what he should do. He's revealing the Walmartification. It's not a Walmartification. This is what the country's always been. The 2-week ritual corridor between Juneteenth and Independence Day, it can be the place where we get a clear focus. And by this time next year, we're going to be very much more clear about what these white nationalist agenda is. It can be the corridor. It could be the corridor where we really think about this. So for these next few minutes, as we kind of tighten up, I want to introduce a historical moment that I've been thinking about a lot, and really a lot more reminded of. As I said, we talked about this in 154 and 190 intermittently throughout some other sessions here in class. But when I was at the African American Library at the Gregory School in Houston, after we left each other in Galveston Prof that Friday in Texas, right after Juneteenth, the Friday after Juneteenth, I went to Houston, and my niece Eden, who just came back from North Carolina A&T, where she set up camp, got everything right. Her mom and dad were there, and then I'm looking at the pictures like, man, this is beautiful. I'm gonna spend a lot of time in Greensboro the next 4 years. But between they took me and dropped me off at Freedman's homes, and I told y'all about that a couple of weeks ago. I went over to the Gregory School, and one of the things I do when I go into libraries is look for books that I don't have yet. And over the years, that moved from, I got to get all these books, to, I got to get a lot of these books, to, I got to get a few of these books, to, now I'm looking for 1 or 2 books, because I pretty much got, if they Black books, and a lot of other books, but especially Black. So, and then I saw a book I hadn't seen before, this, and then I started looking for it. Priced it, I gamed it, I started going to my various haunts, and since we were in Texas, I've been a lot of places, New York, Philly, I've a lot of different places, looking. I found a copy. This is a book by Wayne Rosen, who is a boxing scholar and writer. It's called America on the Ropes, Pictorial History of the Johnson-Jeffries fight. And of course, we're talking about Jack Johnson, the Galveston Giant, who we talked about when we were in Galveston. The first Black heavyweight champion of the world, 1908, December 1908, took that championship. And Jim Jeffries. Jim Jeffries is the white man who is the embodiment of, was the first person to hold the title of, a title that continues up to and through this day. Whether you want it or not, Paige Buckers don't want this title, even though she's the leading vote getter for the WNBA All-Star game. The young lady from Iowa who's now with the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark, she don't want that title. But it don't matter what they want, because you're living in a social structure where white nationalists think white nationalism is going to be the thing that will be dispositive in this country, and they're on the ropes, so they need any kind of hero, as our sister Whitney Houston channeling her inner George Benson and extending it to everybody's looking for a hero. People need someone to look up to, and if they don't have anybody, they'll embrace a leader of the minority in the United States House of Representatives and think that that's somehow a proxy for power. Or basketball players. Paige Buckers didn't ask for it. Caitlin Clark didn't ask for it. Jim Jeffries, however, did not shy from it, with Jack London and the rest of them racists named him the first of what is now a permanent fixture in U.S. popular imagination, the Great White Hope. That's the Galveston Giant versus the Great White Hope. They pulled this white boy out of retirement, Jim Jeffries, the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. It's up to you, Jeff. That's what Jack London, writer of Call of the Wild, and them was saying. He said, you got to get in that ring and knock the smile off the Ethiopian's face. And this picture, this book, this excellent book, in fact, this book, this 300-page book, 300+ page book, is a pictorial history of the fight between Jack Johnson and Jim Jeffries. And when did it take place? July the 4th, 1910. July the 4th, 1910. They pull him out. He's in retirement. He on his alfalfa farm, and they asking him, here's the eternal question: will you fight? Will you fight the Negro? And y'all already know how they depicted Jack Johnson in the cartoons, big lips, all this kind of thing. This dude was all overweight. They had him out at the man. I would show y'all punch for punch. But look, this is how he looked when he first started training. He agreed to come out. He's not in any shape to fight anybody. You see him, big boy. Then he starts training, right? Here he is. They put him at the Chicago White Sox baseball game. He's a national hero. Y'all know how they do the national heroes. I'm gonna take this cover off because underneath the slip cover is the same cover. So I just take it off there. There it is. America on the ropes. America is on the ropes, friends. I'm not sad about that. Not sad about that. Now, so they finally agree to fight. They call it the fight of the century. And there's the fight of the century. Jack Johnson, the Galveston Giant, versus Jim Jeffries. Now, they're going to fight. It's going to be in Alaska. Johnson won the heavyweight championship in Australia. They fighting down there. And of course, now the people sniff and say, this is all about money. Of course, it's about money. Y'all can see there. You see how they doing doing Jack Johnson? But here's the public, right? So Johnson and Jeffries are sawing up the public to make all this money. But it's not just about money. Two of our leading coin extractors is what they call them, right? But you see what they're doing to Jack Johnson. I'm not going to go through the promoters, through the entire history, but you see that this is very interesting. Don't let me get started. But I'm gonna make this kind of brief. Very interesting. Here's Jeffries in his training camp, and they got one Negro to spar with him. Now Jeffries is in shape. Get it right. Jeffries is in shape. Oh, he's in shape. See the black dude over here? He got a black sparring partner, a part of his crew, right? They all there. Now, Jack Johnson didn't have to round himself into shape. He already been in shape because he had been beating people's behinds. But interestingly enough, here's Johnson. Johnson throwing his medicine ball with one hand. Here go his man's over here like, yeah, man, y'all messing with us. Here's Johnson lifting this little black boy in the chair up like this. And it's like, you see what this is. This is race war. This is race war. In fact, Gerald Horne's book, Black and Brown, he talks about how Jack Johnson, he's not apolitical, but Jack Johnson is just trying to fight. I'm just trying to fight. I'm trying to be in the ring. Here he is, in various forms, in shape as he's getting in shape, this kind of thing. But it doesn't matter what they want. They are proxies for something else. July the 4th, 1910, they build this huge arena out of wood and tar. San Francisco is where they training, and then they decide we can't have it in San Francisco. So they take the entire wooden arena apart and bring it to Reno, Nevada, which agrees to host a fight. Reno, Mar-a-Lago, Washington, D.C., same thing, all about the money grab and power. And they reassemble it, and they do it so quickly and so hastily that at that day, July 4th, 1910, as the sun is baking down on all these people who have come by hundreds of thousands to flood Reno to get in this arena to watch Jack Johnson get this ass whipping from the Great White Hope, the tar, the pitch holding the arena together, the wooden slats, is literally dripping between the wooden boards. So they literally risking their lives to go. And so I'm going to, let me go through here for just a minute, just for a couple of pieces here, so you can see. As the fight starts, let me see here if I can find it. It's going to be a big day today. Yeah, big day today. They're all flooding in. Here they are. They're flooding into this little ass town of Reno, Nevada. You see them flooding in. They come from all over, the gamblers, the sports bettors, all the people who you see now on television talking about, is Giannis going to stay in Milwaukee? All the people who make a living by saying, oh, Dame Lillard's contract is gone and he got waived and now he's going to get his money, but he ain't playing for the Bucks no more. All the people, can LeBron go with the Lakers? All the people who wouldn't throw rice at a wedding, never bust a grape in a fruit salad, never played nothing, diddlywinks, Monopoly, Uno, whatever, talking about other people. You see, that's these people right here. And they done bet all their money that Jim Jeffries is going to avenge white people. You know what this picture of, y'all? This all the living boxing champions they could find, all of them white. They put them in the ring before the fight. Look at that Bull Durham sign. Y'all know what Bull Durham is, right? Go back to North Carolina, talk about that. Not the movie. I'm talking about where it came from. Look at that. All these white boxers, right? There's no line of black boxers. And black people are not at this fight because this is not for them. And then, look at this. Look at Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson is nervous. Look at him. He's looking like, wait, what? Oh, what did Jack London say? This is the same guy who made y'all read in elementary school. Call it a while. He said, somebody got to knock the smile off the Ethiopian's face. The Ethiopian, friends, I'll come back to that in a minute. The Ethiopian, he didn't say knock the smile off the Negro's face, even the N-word. Ethiopian was used as a slur. This is for my descendants of slaves, friends. Take a moment here. We'll resume the story. This is this most recent issue of New York Magazine. Surprised? That, of course, is the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani. Saw some noise yesterday, and I danced a little bit on social media. Not a lot, but I had a 15 seconds of time. I was out doing CSI yesterday, crime scene investigations. But people mad because Mamdani, when he was applying to Columbia, where his daddy works, by the way, and he didn't get in, including this program, that people mad at because apparently some cyber doxer looking to see if Columbia still uses race in admissions illegally cracked into Columbia's databases and sent out admissions application records, which included Mamdani's application to go to Columbia and get in this program, which he didn't do. The New York Times, that paragon of ethics, took the information, called Mamdani. He said, yeah, that is true. Now, why the hell did y'all get my records? But since y'all did, yeah, it's true. When I applied, I checked Asian. And you know, Asian don't tell you nothing. You're Indian, Laotian, Vietnamese. But yeah, Asian, because people from India. He was born in Kampala, Uganda, as we talked about last week. So he checked Black or African American. American Negroes, some, and a lot of bots, and a lot of agents of chaos are angry. There are differences of opinion. I myself have no problem for it. In fact, I was dancing with one of those bots or trolls or deeply underinformed folks who fell into the victim of this weaponized ignorance yesterday. And I said, you know, I would make your head, the blackface nativist's head, really explode. Because if you go to South Africa in the 1970s and 80s and look at Bantu Steve Biko and his comrades in the Black consciousness movement, I put black in quotation marks because their concept of blackness was a political blackness, which included Indians, which included quote unquote colors. Black was a political formation. And my question then is, as people were saying, no, I didn't know there were two black candidates running for mayor, Eric Adams and Mamdani. And I just laughed and said, there are no black candidates running. Because if you think somehow Eric Adams' skin color is something you should have some fidelity with or some solidarity with, if you look at his policies, you done lost your damn mind. Y'all can have that, Negro. But my point is this. Depending on how you define African American, Zoran Mamdani is an African. He was born in Africa. He was born in Uganda. And I understand people say, no, I'm not talking about that. Well, then what are you talking about? Beyond phenotype. Because Eric Adams already come out and say, oh, that's crazy. And then here come out of his political grave, Andrew Cuomo saying, well, what else is he hiding? Mamdani is, I never claimed. And there's no record anywhere of him ever saying he was black. He said what I was doing was trying to give the widest expression, the greatest expression to my multiple identities. I get it. Is he being disingenuous? Maybe he is. I don't care. Because his policies, from what I can see and what I've read and what I can experience from listening to people, including, thank you, Tanisha, Monday night in office hours, as you walked us through this, a native New Yorker and Mamdani's campaign. From what I can see, he's a hell of a lot better than Eric Adams. And people going to argue about checking off some boxes where your box isn't on there in a regime, a racial regime, when you read Jacob Carruthers' Science and Oppression, that is designed to do exactly what some of these Negroes is doing. You done fell into the trap. America's on the ropes. Why in the hell would you not press the advantage? They don't have another gear after the rope-a-dope. I didn't see the Black Gerber's baby. I didn't see Senator Tim Scott yesterday skinning and grinning, but I didn't watch a lot of the coverage. I'll go and look. I'm sure he was said somewhere. But in this article on Mamdani, there was another article I read that captured my attention. It says Black Americans are moving to Ghana and driving the cost of living for everyone around them. This is Kechi Nene Nomu, who's a Nigerian American writer, who's writing about this expatriation, people going to Ghana. Now, the headline is deeply misleading. I don't know that she wrote that headline, because when you read this little article, what you see is that, yes, that property values and construction prices are going up in Ghana, but they're still infinitesimal when you compare them to the prices everywhere else. And the most of the article is about African people in Ghana and African people from the United States who are now living in Ghana and contributing to the economy and getting involved, not only getting along, but being very optimistic. America's on the ropes. I'm saying that's a misleading headline, but it was a very interesting article. I'm raising that to say that. As I read, of course, I was thinking, of course, we have to build this physical library. I'm saying I could absolutely see it. I'm very much open to it. I said something to Ajwa about it as I was reading, and I texted her, I said, yeah, maybe that needs to be in Ghana. And affiliates can be in the United States and other places. But ultimately, we have to do what is best for us, as David Hammond said in that piece from 1970. So, you know, and guess what? Guess what? Anybody want to say something about it? This article here on these schools, voucher effort widens reach in Trump plan. These white supremacists, white nationalists first, America second. They try to confuse y'all. They try to confuse you. Where's Mamdani's loyalty? To our common humanity. That means he's not American. If you define America as white nationalists, you damn right. We're going to roll over y'all like the political sea, my friends. So Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries now in the ring. Johnson is like, hold up. Johnson is like, where you at? You know, Bravehearts, where you at? Come on, where he at? He got this regal robe on as he comes in the ring. Now, mind you, years later, the man who emulated part of his fight strategy and who has all the fight films on Jack Johnson, the great Mike Tyson, says, I'm coming in like Jack Johnson with black trunks, no shoes. Yeah, but don't forget, Johnson used to wear these elaborate robes like he was some kind of African royalty. And they didn't refer to him as the N-word or Negro exclusively. They called him the Ethiopian. I want y'all just let's sit with that. That's what made me think of Mamdani. You know, you're moving out of solidarity and toward nativism at the exact moment the world is shrinking and you need friends and allies. Well, anyway, y'all know what happened. On this day, Jack Johnson beats the tar out of Jim Jeffries. It wasn't even close. These white boys is mad. They leaving now because they have lost their fight. This is cartoons, the last page of the Johnson Jeffries story by Goldberg. And here goes one of the bettors who raised all their money. What are you kicking about? Think of the poor fight expert who picked Jeff and has to go around for the rest of his life wearing a false beard. And they're talking about all these people that lost all their money. But that's not the end of the story. And this is where I want to end for the day. Two things. This was the heavyweight championship of the world 115 years ago yesterday, Friday, July 4th, 1910. Wow. Boxing's a problem. It's a metaphor. It's a fight metaphor. And that metaphor on the ropes, using those natural gifts, who is our metaphorical Jack Johnson in 2025? Politicians have become avatars. I don't care whether it's Jasmine Crockett. Y'all accusing her of not being a team player. She raised all this money for y'all. Guess what? Nah. Hakeem Jeffries, I don't care. Necessary political theory, unnecessary. Zoran Mamdani as a fight back avatar. And again, thanks to Nisha talking with Dale and Robert as we talked about, you know, this question in office hours. But two things as I kind of conclude now. Number one, at the time in 1910, these white supremacists went on a murderous rampage after the Johnson fight. We've talked about that. Go back in the archive and you can go into in detail. You can read Jack Johnson's memoir. You can read the books about Jack Johnson, all of them listed in the bibliography. We've covered this ground before, so I'm not going to cover it here. But they were out lynching black people, killing black people because Jack Johnson won the heavyweight championship. That was the reaction. As I told you all one quick story that I won't belabor on, but since I've talked about this before, I won't talk about it extensively, but I will mention it here, where the brother came into the diner and said, and all these white people in there sitting in this white diner, and the brother comes in and says, yeah, I'd like to order breakfast. I want my eggs. I like some eggs and coffee. I like those eggs weak, yellow, and runny, like Jim Jeffries, and my coffee hot, black, and strong, like Jack Johnson. They lynched that brother. They lynched that brother. But that was number one. Number two, Johnson, heavyweight champion of the world, beats the greatest white champion, the great white hope. That metaphor continues through time. But at that moment, this is a cartoon that was, now watch this. This is crazy, right? This is 115 years ago, right? Watch this. That's what he said. Look what he said. He said, cheer up, white folks. It might be worse. World champion wrestler, world champion sprinter, world champion batsman, world's greatest football player, amateur golf champion, international tennis champion. America on the ropes. So they said, don't worry. Guess what? All that came to pass. Well, was an amateur champion. Then he was a professional champion, right? Coco Golf. I'm sorry, sis. Whatever happened on that grass in Wimbledon, because grass was your thing for a minute, right? But all these things happened. Baseball, track, wrestling, football, golf, tennis. They said, don't worry. Yeah, you should be worried, because here's the thing. As I conclude with a beautiful picture, which was common at the time, but you don't see this a lot, because when you see Jack Johnson, the first thing they want to do is throw a white woman up. It's like Frederick Douglass, who married Helen Pitts when they was both old as hell, and after his first wife, Anna, made transition. I always want to put, okay, but you know what? Here's Jack Johnson with his wife. That's not his wife. That's his mama. And look at the caption. Look at the caption. An off-scene photo of Jack Johnson and his mother, Tiny, the only woman he ever placed complete trust in. I'll always love my mama. She's my favorite girl. I love that picture of Jack Johnson and his mother, known as Tiny, Galveston, Texas, where we were 2 weeks ago. But our challenge now is to remember not only that the world goes on, but as Jamil Bowie reminded us, writing in the New York Times last week, that Donald Trump is not governing like an outlier. He's governing like a Republican, where the white national policy has come. The domestic policy is to shrink the government, take all of the money and give it to rich people, and to advance white nationalist ideological agendas like these charter schools. The foreign policy is to bomb as many people as you can. Y'all saw in Iran this week, the Iranian government telling the UN inspectors, y'all got to get out. So guess what? 2 weeks ago, bombing them, you know what that does? That accelerates the timetable for creating a nuclear weapon. You cannot create deterrence by bombing people, because all you're doing is making sure that they ain't going to cooperate with anybody else. So maybe that was the plan all along. And the mistake that we make, which is why we got to pity the fool. This is the flaw in ADOS thinking and all that. The mistake we made is that the white nationalism that lies at the core of their project, and by they I mean the open enemies of our common humanity, regardless of your background, they conflate it with these national myth-making moments like July 4th, like Independence Day, next year, the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, and then we take that rhetoric like it can be redeemed and strengthen their hand, just like Leader Jeffries did the other day on the floor for almost 9 hours, when he says, you know, in 1775, they had a project. And so in order to push back against that project, they created the 1776 project. And that was independence. So now, to push back against Project 2025, we must create the 2026 project. Yeah, I'm sitting there like, whatever gets us to the point, man, because that is so deeply methodologically flawed. But at the same time, I understand this is the fatal flaw. You commingle your narratives, your governance narratives, with the social structure narrative, and you think somehow you can overwhelm that narrative. Best of luck. I pity the fool that falls in love with you and expects you to be true, because every time they get the upper hand, they do what they did at that signing ceremony on Friday. But ultimately, America is on the ropes. And just like Johnson beat the best white fighter they could find, and that ultimately all those things they were scared of as well in sports came true, so too politically, when we match our full strength, we can renegotiate the terms of all these societies and find ourselves in the kind of world that all of us want to live in, regardless of background. But it begins by disabusing ourselves of make-believe. And that's what I think we should spend this quarter between Juneteenth and Independence Day from now on. Maybe we build toward a big one next week. That 2-week quarter should be the time when we focus very cleanly and clearly on doing just that and understanding how much progress we've made in there.
Ashe, and the project we should be working on shouldn't center them at all.
Exactly. Exactly. It's that simple. Why is that so hard, do you think, Prof? People understand.
Work requires work, community, remembering. It's what we do. And the frustration I have is like, we're here. We have a couple thousand people in Nubia right now today, but we have tens of thousands of people. And pick an area that you're expert in or an area that you want to expand. You live somewhere, you're in a community, make sure your neighborhood is tight. If it's not, start a neighborhood watch, get a neighborhood block association, which I grew up with. And now collectively, you can go petition your city councils and your mayors and your police chiefs as a group and get some resources done. Join an organization, NAACP, Nation of Islam, whatever the organization is, come, bring your brick there. Come not just to sit in the seats and be fed, but come with a dish. Keep the raisins out of your pockets, and let's build some things and have a 10-year plan, a 25-year plan, a 50-year plan. That project 2025 has been 80 years in the making. They keep adding pages to it. It's 900 pages, not because they developed it last week or before November. It's because they've been planning since Reconstruction how to dismantle and get back into the place. And it started with reparations for them, which they got. And then terror, which they fomented and created, the Night Riders and the KKK and the CCC and all of it. Now it's MAGA. It was Tea Party before. This ain't different. We keep reacting instead of being proactively planning and standing up for however many hours talking about a project 2026 that you have not put one page to is folly. It's folly. Stop playing.
Stop playing.
And if you don't have the capacity to build, sit your ass down and be quiet.
Right.
Move out the way.
We use you. We use you. Politicians are not our friends.
Correct. Correct.
But I ain't mad at Hakeem Jeffries. Just know his limitations.
We should be electing people who actually can do stuff.
I agree with that too.
Oh, it's nice to have fans. And I was just thinking about that coming in, Dr. Carr, and I know we're gonna wrap up, but I was thinking about the culture that we're in to have followers. I left Twitter, not engaging in Twitter. And I was like, so I had 150-something thousand followers, but what did that mean? That meant not that it didn't mean anything because each individual, but I'm concerned about the individuals, which is why we build community, which is why we're in Nubia, which is why you make sure we're on YouTube, because those people aren't followers. We're not influencers. We're not doing this for the clicks and the likes. We don't, or the algorithm, whatever that is, which I know, of course. We're doing this because this is how you build with people who have visions and things that they want to get done. And then we come together and plug in whatever holes, because we can't do it alone. Even this, this is a collaboration.
That's right.
Every day. And it's not just me and you. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into the back and the forth. And this is the way forward.
That's right. Together.
And
you can't, if you're going to be a representative figure, and not represent, that's wrong. If you're going to be an avatar, if you're going to be made into an avatar by popular culture, and two contrasting ones come to mind as you were talking, Prof, thinking about these two. One, of course, Curtis Jackson, the man known as 50 Cent, who comes out to slam Mamdani, and I respect that. Because after all, he gets money he got. I get it. You flip your quarter waters, Coca-Cola buy it. What the F got you, man? I ain't mad at you, Curtis. Because you're not a leader. You're an avatar. And in many ways, you're a caricature. And you become very successful at it. Just like people made some money off of Johnson when they bet on Jack Johnson in 1910. Just like the brother Joe Medwick Veazey. Joe Medwick, who wrote I Pity the Fool, was selling the songs for, and accounts vary. Was it $5 a piece? Was it $25 a piece? Was it $100 a piece? To the owner of the record label that produced Bobby Blue Bland. Everybody's in it to make money. So I get what Curtis is saying. That's one example. But the other side is something that I wasn't thinking about, but I was happy to see. As I said, I was we were at William Melly, one of the 7 freedom school sites this summer in Philly is at the William Kelly School. Kelly was a white abolitionist in the 19th century. The name for this school is a school in North Philly on 20th Street, North Philly. That's where I was Tuesday. And on the wall, when you go into Kelly, in addition to a montage of school photographs where you see we went from all white to all black, which is fascinating. We talked about that too. But on the other wall, there is a poster with dozens of Philadelphia high school graduates who are now come to some national or international prominence. Of course, you think about the Will Smiths and others. And one of the young people, then young persons who graduated from Philadelphia Public Schools, who is now internationally known, of course, is Jasmine Sullivan. So to see Jasmine Sullivan and somebody who I wouldn't expect, I see you from Philly, to see James Todd Smith, to see LL Cool J say, I'm not going to come on a stage. Now, y'all got to understand, if y'all from Philly, if you've been in Philly, y'all understand. Philadelphia's where they made up America. The biggest event of the Philadelphia Public Festival year isn't the Greek picnic used to be, isn't the Roots picnic. It's Welcome America, because that's the America's birthplace, Independence Hall. They have this huge thing. LL Cool J says, all love to the mayor, I ain't mad, but listen, I'm not going to cross the picket line. That's the type of solidarity. Shout out to District Council 33. I'm sorry, Mayor Parker. God bless you, former school teacher, good sister. But when you got, when I was in Philly Tuesday, they were dragging her for filth because the mayor's office sent out a message: take your trash to the centers where you can put. And black people was dragging the mayor, but you ain't put my sloppy trash in the back of my car and try. You could go. LL said,
I'm not supposed to bring it on the train or the bus because I don't have a car because it's
no problem. But to the point you're raising, though, we make progress not as individuals, but together. When LL and Jasmine Sullivan said we're not going to, that sent a message. They didn't. They could have gotten their check.
Right, because they have character, unlike a Nelly or Snoop or all the other people we can name, Curtis Jackson. They stand for something, and they've always kind of stood for something and stood on business. I know personally, because my very first book. My very first book was with LL Cool J. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time with that young person. I was talking about this yesterday, 26 years old, with the depth of knowledge. He has read things. He knows things. You can make him into a rapper, but that young man always had a sense of self and purpose and community and community. And and he said, I don't need the money. I'm not going to come in here for a check, Nelly. I'm not gonna come in here for a check, Snoop. Oh, somebody asked me to do something, but what do you stand for? Do you need the money that badly? Or do you think we are so bereft of character ourselves that we'll just be okay with anything that you do? You can feed us any kind of slop.
Come on.
You can play in our faces and we'll still support you. No, we won't. Ask Target.
Ask Target.
And that is an avatar for all the corporations. It's not Target. Target's not the target. It's a system that plays in our faces and expect us to still show up with our dollars and our support. And we're saying no.
It's going to be I don't know if you have any talk about this, but of course, Target is an anchor sponsor for Essence Fest. It's going to be very interesting when we get to report back.
They don't take the check, Dr. Carr. They don't take the check.
No, they took the check. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So, all right.
People were calling me from New Orleans like, hey, wait till this. I want to hear how y'all negotiated that, because Target, what did y'all? I wonder back of house, did they make any concessions? I mean, what the hell is going on here? So,
when we tie ourselves, which is what I love about this space, to somebody else's control of our economy, we re-enslave ourselves. We put ourselves in a position where we are not moving freely in our own spirit because we're tied to somebody else's dangling check. And people say, oh, get your money. At what cost? We want auction blocks, and now we are free to make decisions, right? What are we going to do moving forward?
What are we going to do? Well, that's the question. America's on the ropes. Now, we in it, but we don't have to put up with this. We can change this place. We can change everything. There he is.
And we pity the fool.
We pity. Hey, look, pity. Not because we want to beat you up, but you can change. And then we realize the fool is us. Anyway, I'm gonna mute here but you about to play it going out.
I'm gonna play it again.
Oh boy, let me leave my mind right, y'all. Y'all understand it. This right here. Let me just say this. B.B. King referred to Bobby Blue Bland's voice as silken. This is the blues, y'all. This is what Ryan Coogler and Zinzi Coogler tapped into. You understand? So let me just be quiet. This is it on Independence Day weekend. I pity the fool. Love you.
Love you too.